Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The elegant room was alive with the hum of conversation and the soft chime of glasses, the business event in full swing. The air crackled with energy, and I was swept into its flow, laughing and mingling with friends, completely absorbed in the vibrant atmosphere. The evening felt like one of those rare moments of perfection, when everything aligns effortlessly. A couple of drinks had softened my edges, making me more open, more carefree, as the buzz of the crowd amplified my excitement. On the periphery of it all stood Victor, my husband, quietly observing, distant from the revelry. Social gatherings had never been Victor's forte. He was a man of quiet pleasures, preferring the intimacy of a calm evening to the commotion of such events. Yet, caught up in the whirlwind of the night, I barely noticed his solitude, or maybe I chose to ignore it. The group I was with shifted into a playful mood, tossing around light-hearted jabs. Someone joked about men being under their wives' thumbs, and without thinking, I joined in. My laughter was loud, exaggerated, too much. And then I went further. A thoughtless quip about Victor spilled from my lips, sharp and stinging. The words hung in the air, cutting deeper than I realized in the moment. My friends erupted in laughter, feeding my sense of misplaced triumph. For a fleeting moment, I reveled in the attention, oblivious to the harm I had just caused. But now, when I revisit that moment in my mind, I see it all too clearly. Victor's posture stiffened, his face shadowed with hurt. His shoulders sagged under the weight of my betrayal. Yet, in that instant, I was too wrapped up in the group's amusement to recognize the damage. Then, the atmosphere shifted. Victor moved toward me, his steps deliberate, his demeanor unnervingly composed. The lively chatter around us seemed to fade, leaving only the thrum of my heartbeat. I greeted him with a forced smile, hoping he'd dismiss my words as he so often did. But his calm expression masked something deeper, a storm brewing behind his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost inaudible, but his words cut through the noise like a knife. "It's over." He turned and walked away, leaving those two words hanging in the air like an irrevocable sentence. My world tilted as the weight of his statement hit me. The room, still alive with laughter and chatter, felt distant, like a scene from a play I no longer belonged to. My breath caught, and my body froze. I wanted to chase after him, to take back my cruel words, to beg for forgiveness. But guilt anchored me to the spot, while the others around me remained unaware that my life had just unraveled. I stood there paralyzed, replaying the moment in my mind. The laughter, the careless joke, the way I had savored the fleeting validation, each detail sharpened my regret. In my selfish pursuit of attention, I had shattered something precious. Victor was gone, and with him, the life we had built together. Though the evening carried on around me, I was lost in a whirlwind of regret, haunted by the realization that my own thoughtlessness had cost me everything. I dissected every second of that fateful moment, painfully aware of how I had become the very person I never wanted to be, the kind who could betray the one they loved in such a public, heartless way. But it wasn't always like this. I wasn't always like this. The beginning. How we met. Before that fateful night, I was a different person. I would never have imagined hurting Victor, let alone in such a cruel way. I loved him once, deeply, and without reservation. Our story began on a rainy afternoon in a cozy cafe. I had been rushing as usual, juggling too many things, when I accidentally spilled coffee all over myself. Embarrassed and flustered, I fumbled to clean up the mess. That's when Victor stepped in. He didn't make a grand gesture or try to be impressive. He simply handed me a napkin with a gentle smile and offered to help. His calm presence caught me off guard, his quiet strength disarming me. Unlike the brash, attention-seeking men I was used to, Victor's understated demeanor was a breath of fresh air. Our first date was just as unassuming. We took a walk in the park, talking for hours and sharing fragments of our lives. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not as the person others expected me to be, but as my authentic self. Victor's steady nature, his ability to listen without judgment, drew me in completely. As we grew closer, I discovered a man with quiet ambition and a profound sense of purpose. He dreamed of starting his own business, not for fame or fortune, but to create a life of independence and meaning. I admired his patience, his ability to find joy in the journey rather than the destination. He grounded me in a way I hadn't realized I needed. One rainy day, much like the one when we first met, I knew I loved him. We had planned to go out, but the weather kept us indoors. We spent the day curled up on the couch, eating takeout and watching old movies. As I looked over at him, his face lit with an unguarded smile, I felt a deep, quiet happiness. It wasn't the fiery passion of infatuation, but a steady, comforting love that made me feel safe. A year later, we were married in a small, intimate ceremony. As we exchanged vows, I believed every word with all my heart. We promised to face life's challenges together, no matter what came our way. But somewhere along the line, I let those promises slip through my fingers, or perhaps I lost sight of the person I used to be. Perhaps the downfall of our relationship was something we both contributed to. As life became more complicated, the bond we shared began to fray. Victor's business, despite his persistent efforts, struggled to gain traction, and that tension seeped into our lives. Meanwhile, my career flourished. I was soaring through the corporate world, working endless hours, attending every networking event, and chasing an insatiable hunger for recognition and validation. Success became my obsession, and in its pursuit, I lost sight of Victor. Victor remained constant, kind, patient, and unwavering in his support, but I had transformed completely. The woman he had once married had faded away, replaced by someone harsher, more critical, and relentlessly demanding more money, more success, and more admiration. In my relentless climb, I neglected the most precious part of my life. Gradually, I began to view Victor not as the man I had once admired, but as someone who lacked the ambition and drive I falsely equated with worth. It's difficult to admit now, but my perception of him grew into something cruel. The very calm and steady nature that had once drawn me to him became the source of my frustration. I wanted him to be someone different, someone who mirrored my own aggression, shared my hunger for achievement, and chased success with the same fervor. But that wasn't who Victor was. Instead of cherishing him for the qualities that made him unique, I criticized him for not becoming more like me. My dissatisfaction revealed itself in subtle ways at first. I'd make offhand remarks or gentle suggestions that he should do more, but those comments grew sharper, biting deeper over time. What began as sarcasm evolved into cutting humor, and eventually, I found myself openly belittling him, even in front of others. The escalation was so gradual that I didn't realize how far it had gone until it was too late. Reflecting on it now, I wonder if my behavior was a defense mechanism, an attempt to mask my own insecurities by projecting them onto him. I became consumed with projecting an image of power and success. Somehow I convinced myself that diminishing Victor elevated me, but all it did was reveal my own cruelty. I often think back to the person I used to be, the woman who loved Victor for his authenticity, who valued him for more than his accomplishments. That woman is gone, replaced by someone I barely recognize, someone who said things that can never be unsaid. The unraveling of our relationship wasn't abrupt. It was a slow, creeping change, so subtle that I can't pinpoint the exact moment admiration turned into resentment. I've replayed it in my mind endlessly, searching for that turning point. But it wasn't a single decision to hurt him. It was a gradual erosion, a poison that spread quietly through the cracks in our bond. The truth is, my insecurities fueled it all. As my career reached new heights, I became the version of myself I had always dreamed of being, respected, successful, envied. I thrived on the attention my achievements brought, yet with every step forward, Victor seemed to remain the same. He found contentment in his small business and his steady pace, indifferent to societal standards of success. At first, I admired his quiet determination, but over time, admiration turned to frustration. Why wasn't he striving for more? Why didn't he match my drive? My thoughts became dominated by comparisons. At work events, I was surrounded by ambitious, high-powered individuals who radiated confidence as they discussed lucrative deals and grand expansions. I found myself yearning for that same energy in Victor. It was an unfair expectation, but at the time it only deepened my dissatisfaction. His contentment felt like a mirror reflecting my own fears and insecurities. The first time I made a cutting remark, it was almost accidental. At a dinner party, someone asked about Victor's business, and before he could answer, I made a joke about his relaxed pace. It drew laughter, even from Victor, though his smile faltered slightly. That moment gave me a fleeting sense of power. By diminishing him, I felt momentarily elevated. It became a pattern, offhand comments cloaked in humor that, little by little, chipped away at him. Victor never retaliated. He laughed along, made a self-deprecating comment, and moved on. But in private, I saw the weight it carried. He grew quieter, his once easy laughter fading. I told myself he was just stressed, but deep down, I knew better. I was driving a wedge between us, and he was pulling away. Even as I noticed his pain, I didn't stop. I couldn't. My insecurities had taken control, and no achievement ever seemed enough to fill the void inside me. I used Victor as a scapegoat, projecting my own feelings of inadequacy onto him. Belittling him gave me fleeting relief, but it left lasting damage. My words became sharper, my criticisms more pointed. I questioned his decisions, accused him of being lazy or unmotivated about our future. The first time I openly called him out, the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. For a brief moment, I hesitated, but instead of apologizing, I doubled down, convincing myself that I was being honest, that my words were a form of tough love. But they weren't. They were a manifestation of my own flaws and fears. Now, all I have left is the memory of who I once was, and the painful realization of what I've lost. I always knew deep down, though I tried to deny it. Each time his silence stretched longer, every moment when the light in his eyes dimmed further, I felt it unmistakably. I was hurting him, yet I couldn't stop. It gave me a twisted sense of control, a hollow illusion of power that distracted me from the chaos within. I told myself I was the one keeping everything together, but in truth, I was unraveling and dragging Victor down with me. Looking back, I see it with painful clarity. I had become toxic. My insecurities and fears had transformed me into someone I barely recognized, someone who built themselves up by tearing others down. Victor's love had always been steady, patient, and unconditional, but I was too blinded by my own turmoil to appreciate it. Worse, I didn't realize how much damage I was causing until it was far too late. By the time I understood the weight of my actions, the harm was irreparable. I had pushed him away, piece by piece, and I had no one to blame but myself. I assumed Victor was unshakable, that his calm and forgiving nature would endure no matter how harsh my words became. But everyone has limits, and I didn't see his until I had shattered them. Slowly but surely, I wore him down, and by the time I noticed he was almost gone, it was already over. When he finally broke, it broke both of us. There was no dramatic argument, no yelling, no tears. It happened on an unremarkable Tuesday evening. We sat across from each other at the dinner table, the silence between us as heavy and oppressive as it had become over months, perhaps even years. I don't remember what we were eating, but I'll never forget the weight of that moment. That day, I had come home exhausted and irritable after another long day at work, a place where I felt admired and important. Victor had cooked dinner, as he often did, and instead of gratitude, I made a dismissive comment about how he must have too much free time. He didn't respond. He rarely did anymore. He just sat there, staring at his plate and moving the food around listlessly. The silence suffocated me, so I broke it the only way I knew how, with another jab. I made some cutting remark about how his business might succeed if he spent less time in the kitchen. The exact words escape me now, but I remember the tone, sharp, mocking, designed to wound. Victor usually deflected such comments with a self-deprecating joke or a change of subject, but this time he didn't. Instead, he set his fork down and looked at me, his expression one I wasn't ready for. It wasn't anger. I had expected him to snap, to yell, to finally push back, but his eyes held only quiet resignation. "I can't do this anymore," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. At first, I didn't grasp what he meant. His words weren't dramatic or loud. They were calm, deliberate, and devastating. They chilled me. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "You can't do what anymore?" He met my gaze, truly looked at me for the first time in years. His eyes reflected exhaustion, pain, and a deep sorrow I hadn't noticed before. "This," he said, gesturing between us. "Us. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. It's not. It hasn't been for a long time." A wave of panic rose in my chest, but I tried to dismiss it. "Don't be ridiculous, Victor," I said, clinging to control. "We're just going through a rough patch. Everyone does." He shook his head slowly. "This isn't a rough patch, Anna. It's something broken, and I don't think I know how to fix it." I opened my mouth to argue, to plead, but he silenced me with a look. "You've been pushing me away for years," he continued, his voice heavy with weariness. "I kept holding on, thinking it would get better, that we'd find our way back. But every time I tried, you shut me out. You made me feel small, and I can't do it anymore." His words hit me like a blow. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. I had always imagined that if we fell apart, it would end with shouting, tears, and eventually, reconciliation. But there was no anger in his voice, only defeat. "You don't mean that," I said, my voice trembling. "We can fix this. We just need more time." He shook his head again. "We've had time, years of it, and this is where it's brought us." Desperation surged through me. "Victor, I'm sorry," I blurted, the words foreign and awkward. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just frustrated. But we can work through this, can't we?" For a moment, I thought he might relent. But then he shook his head once more, his eyes brimming with sadness. "I don't think I have anything left to give." The silence that followed was unbearable. All the control, all the power I had clung to so fiercely slipped through my fingers in an instant. "I love you, Anna," he said quietly. "But love isn't enough anymore, not when it's so one-sided." I wanted to beg him to stay, to promise change, but the words wouldn't come. After years of pretending I didn't need him, that I was stronger without him, I no longer knew how to ask for forgiveness. He stood, his movements deliberate and heavy. "I'll stay at my brother's for a while," he said, avoiding my eyes. "We both need some space." And then he was gone. The soft click of the door echoed in the suffocating quiet of a house that suddenly felt too empty. I sat there, staring at the empty chair, replaying the moment over and over. I had pushed him too far, too many times. And now he was gone. I had no one to blame but myself. I had driven him away with my bitterness, my need for control, my fear of vulnerability. I thought I was strong and independent, but sitting alone in the silence, I realized how fragile I truly was. Victor had been my anchor, the best part of me, and now he was gone. Forever. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.